Hi everyone, today let's talk about NVIDIA saving the markets. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe to help out the channel, and let's get started. So NVIDIA posted a 265% gain in terms of revenue, and they did beat. You can see they're up almost 10%, so very strong from NVIDIA. They continued to deliver earnings per share $5.16 versus $4.64 expected. Revenues also beating here, $22 billion versus $20.62 billion, so absolutely colossal growth and exceeding their projections for growth. So NVIDIA never ceases to deliver, which is crazy considering how expensive this company is currently. Almost a $2 trillion company, third largest in the world behind just Microsoft and Apple. And they have not shown any signs of slowing. Massive growth on this quarter, and they continue to say they're going to grow faster next quarter. So very, very strong. Data center sales were up 409%. Massive growth there. There are still a little bit of concerns here with restrictions in terms of chip deliveries to China, but I think that's pretty minimal at this point. Just about everyone is trying to get NVIDIA chips as fast as possible to support their AI moves. And like I said, they continued to deliver on earnings. Moving over to fear and greed, we did have a 1-point step up from the previous close. Basically, nothing has changed here. Extreme greed for momentum and strength. Breadth still holding in regular greed. Volatility was up today, so we'll take a look at that as well. And then the bonds, both still hovering in extreme greed. Moving over to seasonality, I just want to highlight the fact that, remember, the rest of the month is supposed to be relatively bearish compared to the first half of the month and really the first half of the year. The question is, can NVIDIA continue to rally and follow through, and will it take any of the other stocks with it? NVIDIA can't single-handedly hold up the market, in my opinion, so even with NVIDIA going higher on their earnings, it just seems like the rest of the markets still could lag a little bit, which would bring us into flat and potentially bearish price action tomorrow, despite the rally from NVIDIA. So just keep in mind, obviously NVIDIA is driving price after hours today, and it is going much higher because it's basically the only stock that's moving after hours. But once we get into the open market tomorrow, we still could see bearish price action across markets. And even if NVIDIA has more follow through to the upside, we could see the rest of markets sell off. And just to highlight here, the last 2 days of the week do have bearish percentages historically. And then really, like I mentioned, the rest of the month, relatively bearish. And then the last day of the month being another big bearish indicator. So big bears the rest of the week, relatively neutral to bearish Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. And then that Thursday end of the month close is expected to be bearish. Moving over to the economic calendar, I just want to highlight the fact that we did get FOMC minutes. It was a bit of a nothing burger, but it did show hesitancy from the FOMC to cut rates early. So that was really blown off by the markets, which was a little bit surprising. I saw some headlines on it. Maybe I'll do a quick video on it just to highlight the FOMC comments, but they were hesitant to cut rates, which should be bearish for markets, but everything was focused on NVIDIA for today. Moving over to Max Pain, you can see we got very close to 500, up from that 496 area from yesterday. 502 still being that call wall. Do not expect to get above that for the end of the week, and we're close to it. Even if we threw a couple of wicks here, I would expect rejection from 502. And notice there are quite a bit of calls coming in here. Pretty interesting, right in that same range, 497 up to 508. Put call ratio has gone down a little bit. Also a bearish indicator. Potentially a little bit of fear leaving markets could give markets a little bit of room to the downside. 490 being that first put wall. So if we do see selling tomorrow, that would make sense. And like I said, 490 to 497 is what I'm projecting for the end of the week, which would give you about another $2.50 at least of downside, or about 0.5% into the end of the week. Moving over to the S&Ps here, you can see we were trending down throughout the day. We actually did test that trend line here finally, and we did make lower lows on those wicks, and then we found the big spike up, obviously with NVIDIA, right to that next trend line, and now we're finding a little bit of rejection from there. 500 is the next resistance. I would expect this to pull back a little bit tomorrow. Like I mentioned, I don't think NVIDIA can hold up the entire market. Everything else is looking a little bit bearish. Momentum bearish, RSI still bearish here. We ended up slightly positive on the day with that end of day rally here. You can see it on that last candle of the day. Very strong on the candle, up 0.5% in that candle. Otherwise, we would have closed bearish. Volume stepping up there, so a little bit of follow through is potentially possible. Again, 500 to 502, I'm expecting resistance in that area. And you can see we already have a double top or a slightly lower high. If we get into this area one more time and reject, I think that's going to be pretty much the nail in the coffin for this rally, and then we should see bigger breakdowns to that 55 EMA area down in the 480s over the next few weeks. Moving over to the NASDAQ here, similar thesis, trended down, touched my next level at 421.92, wicked it a couple times and then rallied into the close. You can see we're almost into that 430 area, hitting that 55 EMA here on the hourly chart. Momentum bullish, obviously, with that move. But look at this structure. You have a clear high, lower high, and you have a low, lower low, and I would expect rejection off of that 21 EMA tomorrow, which is at 428.27. And if that happens, that's going to be a really big bearish indicator here. So we had the clear break of the 21. We're coming back up here to retest it, potentially even up to the 9 EMA, sitting at 431.66. As long as we reject from those EMAs, then we should be seeing more bearish price action. Right now, the price target is 416.66, right at this initial dip low before we got this bigger rally with the clear divergence. You could also argue left shoulder head, right shoulder forming. So the neckline would be that pivot point here. So we need to get there, see that right shoulder, and then you would expect that bigger follow through to the downside. So waiting to see what happens here, but everything is still indicating bearishness to me. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, starting with the Russell here, similar price action, got a bunch of wicks, lower lows, rallied into the end, hit the 21, did get above it, almost hit my next level at 198.75. Momentum slightly bullish here on the hourly chart. Let's look at the daily just for a moment. We did hit that 21 EMA yesterday, and we got a little bit of a bounce here into the end of the session, but momentum bearish, RSI still bearish here on the daily chart. Still looks like consolidation with a high, lower high, with a pretty significant breakdown. Still looking at that 55 EMA at 195.18 as the initial price target. We have not hit that yet. We have not hit the trend line either. Waiting to see if those levels start to hold. But right now I expect a little bit lower lows through the rest of the week. And then looking at the Dow, similar thesis, high, lower high. Did not get the lower low here, and it was slightly bullish on the day. 0.09%, nothing crazy. It's right at the 9 EMA, sitting at 386.16. Momentum bearish, RSI still above the 50 line, but below the SMA, so a little bit of a mixed signal there, but pretty much in line with the rest of markets. Moving over to the Mag 7 chart, you can see we are still down on the week, but with that earnings, we popped up a little bit to 327.35. Let's look at this on the daily chart. Again, doji on the day, 0.85, gap down and held, hit that 21 EMA, and then we're back into the middle of this consolidation. And then looking at it here on the 12-hour, you can see that move. So you had a clear double top, you had a midpoint, which did get taken out, almost hit that 55 EMA and the next level here at 308.75. And then you have NVIDIA kind of saving the day here back into the middle of the range. The question is, can this hold here, or will we see a push back into that 308 zone tomorrow? I think it'll be interesting to see if NVIDIA is going to spur markets higher, or if we're just going to hover in this range now after this earnings result. Moving over to Apple and Tesla, you can see Apple was actually up a little bit on the day, 0.42%, got right to the level here at 182.37. It is above it after hours just by a few pennies here, but right at resistance, right at this downtrend line too. Let's go ahead and extend that out. And you can see that resistance here is at 183.10. Tomorrow will be about 182.76, so right in that same resistance area. To me, this is still quite bearish. It is right at resistance, but it did get back into the middle of this triangle, and it's still holding this kind of zone where it's come in 4 times at this point. 179.69 is that area of support. Momentum on the daily chart did tick towards bullish just a little bit as well. Let's look at the shorter time frame. Did hold a slightly higher low from yesterday's low, right at resistance, like I said, with that trend line. Not super convincing, but it does look a little bit more like consolidation at this point versus the consistent downtrend that we had been seeing. So worth noting, Apple might have shown a little bit of strength. If this area breaks, then we could see a push to that 144 at 184.97, or right in that 185 area, which is right at the highs here from February the 16th. So keep that in mind. Apple looks a little bit better today than it did yesterday. Moving over to Tesla, 0.5% on the day, tested 197.75, broke down from that area, still holding the 21 EMA, so you could be trading off of that level at 191.24. Didn't test it here today, did test VWAP at 191.90, so slightly bullish in terms of holding some support, but has not broken above that next level. It did test it. If you bought that trade, you would have been stopped out at least a little bit, but still holding the 21, which I think is the more important level. Momentum did step down a little bit, but not much. RSI still hanging in there around the 50 line. Slight uptrend on the shorter time frames, but still waiting for that 197.75 level to break. Moving over to Microsoft and NVIDIA, the AI players. Microsoft was down on the day, 0.15, and then after hours it regained all of that up to 403.50, back above yesterday's highs. So it's gaining a little bit of strength. Momentum still bearish. RSI right in that mid-range. Let's look at this on the 4-hour chart. You can see we did wick those same lows from yesterday, find a little bit of strength. Got the 21 on the 4-hour chart at 404.96, right in that 405 range. You also have the highly traded zone here at 406, so that's potential resistance as well. Momentum says this could go a little bit higher. You got trend resistance up around 410, so that could give you a pretty decent swing here on Microsoft if this has some follow through. It did get above the highs from Tuesday as well, which is a little bit bullish. And then looking at NVIDIA, obviously the big move on earnings. It's given some of that back. It got all the way up to 745 at one point, which was the wick high from the all-time high on 12 February. So we did touch that a little bit and then pull back into the middle of this range, back down to 429. Momentum obviously bullish, RSI bullish with that big move. The question is, will it follow through? Resistance here would be up around 790. And then if that breaks, then my next resistance up in the 850 area. So keep that in mind. Obviously still super bullish here on NVIDIA, but it did show pretty substantial weakness into the earnings report. Moving over to staples and discretionary. Staples continues to look very bullish. Positive on the day, 0.36%. It is down a little bit after hours, about 20 cents, but still holding above that 74 level. As long as 74 holds, looking for 75.40. Momentum continuing to tick towards bullish, RSI bullish here. This looks very clean. Once it breaks above 74.40, then we should get a pretty clean move of another dollar. And then looking at discretionaries, positive on the day, 0.74, but right back into the middle of this range. Can't seem to get above 180.10, but it's continuing to find some support in that 21 EMA area, down around 176.01. So tested that area on Tuesday, rallied up, got a little bit of continuation. Next level of resistance, 180.10. Moving over to oil and gas and energy, both of these super positive on the day. Oil and gas 2.88%, energy 1.88%, momentum bullish, RSI bullish. I said these looked pretty positive even with the pullback yesterday, and sure enough, we got solid follow through, gap up, and rally on both of these. Back above all the EMAs and SMAs here on energy, looking to that 87.37 level. And then looking at oil and gas, 140.88, right at that 144 EMA. If that breaks, you got 145.92. And with how this looks right now, I would expect that break. Moving over to breadth, we actually got positive breadth on the day, which was interesting. So the 20 EMA continuing to hold in this consolidation, hit the 21 EMA on this chart. Momentum slightly bullish, RSI slightly bullish, still trapped between that 21 and 55 EMAs. And then looking at the 50-day average, similar thesis here, 21 EMA sitting at 65.12, got back above 62.25. Momentum did tick to bullish here on the 50-day average, so that's pretty interesting. That's definitely a bullish development. We haven't seen bullish momentum here for a very long time. Saw bullish momentum cross into bearish on 5 December, saw a little bit of a gain, and then we got that bigger sell-off. Let's go ahead and look at this on the weekly chart, see if there's anything to determine here. So big wick rejection last week. Got a bounce off that 200 SMA this week, and now we're getting a bit of a bounce. Does look a little bit more bullish here off of that midline. Could see a double top or a lower high established in that 83.83 area, which could give you a couple of weeks of bullishness. Definitely something to pay attention to. We're seeing a little bit of a step higher on breadth. Moving over to yields, keep in mind that yields continue to look super bullish. They were both up strongly on the day, 1.17 and 0.93% on both of these, coming off of that 9 EMA on the 2-year and the 10-year, touching both of those and then rallying higher. We're right at these most recent highs. On a closing basis, 2-year looking to push back up to that 200 SMA at 4.73. and then potentially up to 4.8, and then the 10-year pushing that 4.35 level. And then if that breaks, I have 4.55. I would expect a pretty strong move here. We're right at resistance. We've already had the pullback, looking for that breakout here. And if that does happen, that could be quite bearish for markets. as yields continue to look very strong. Moving over to the dollar, nothing super convincing here, down slightly 0.05%. Shorter time frames rallied up, tested that 55 EMA and then broke down. Still holding this lower trend line here. You can see we did touch it on that 1300 candle. Still holding that 21 EMA here on the daily chart. Momentum bearish, RSI still hanging in there, but basically bearish. To me, it looks like this is going to break a little bit lower to the 200 SMA down around 1037, and then we'll see what happens from this zone. Haven't quite gotten there yet. Even if we did get here, that would be a higher low from this previous low. And then the question is what happens then? Do we break back down to that 103 area, or does this hold and then we start to push higher into that 1055 area? Critical zone here, waiting to see the direction of the dollar. I would expect it to go higher with yields showing strength, but it really hasn't been moving in the same direction as yields here for a couple of days. Moving over to bonds, both of these were down on the day, as you would expect. Yields were going higher, and I do expect them to go higher, and both of these were down. J&K still hovering in the same area. TLT breaking down. You got a new low close on this most recent down move. I would expect this to push down to the trend line around 90.20, and then 89.16 is my next level. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish here, so TLT looking even weaker than it did yesterday, which makes sense as yields look quite strong. Moving over to the MOVE index and volatility, I wanted to highlight that the MOVE index has actually shown some strength here. So bond volatility showing strength, looking like it's set to go higher. It has a little bit of overhead resistance, but momentum bullish, RSI bullish pretty clearly on the MOVE index. Bonds showing volatility, set to go lower. And then looking at the VIX, still holding a higher low. So we got the big wick high, pulled back, higher low, another wick, still hanging in that same region. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. We're still above yesterday's open, which is quite bullish on the VIX. I still think we're probably going to get a push at least into this 18 area, which would correlate with a push lower in equities. The VIX still hanging in there a little bit more than it should if markets were actually going higher. I think we're just seeing a short-term rally with NVIDIA, and then we'll probably see a continuation lower tomorrow, in my opinion. Moving over to my accounts, you can see I was up quite a lot on the day. The markets were bullish into the end of the day, so we'll see how that plays out tomorrow. I did forget to highlight yesterday that I did pay my margin debt, so you can see I don't have any more margin debt. I had about $600 of margin debt on that previous long hold of a lot of stock into that rally, so had to pay that back. That's part of why I had a little bit outside losses yesterday, but we're back here up about $3,000 still on the year. In terms of positions, I didn't change anything with the IWM, still holding that 192 call. Max profit there, 202.30, so still hanging in that same zone, good on that. And then looking at the triple Qs, I did adjust these positions quite a lot here today, so still holding the shares, still quite a lot of open profit. Those are up around 430. I did have a 422 call, which I did roll down into here today. I'll probably roll that out tomorrow. We'll see how much credit I can get for that. It was already at $3.50 credit, so max profit here was $425.30. We'll see if I can roll it out a little bit, potentially to the Monday session. Then you can see I have some puts and some calls here for the Monday session. I'll probably roll these calls out a little bit. We're pretty much here at my break even already at 428 with the $2 credit, so break even is 430 for the Monday session. And then I have these puts. The original plan here was to get assigned on these calls if markets rallied up a little bit and held that 422 level. And then I would have these puts that I could roll in and up for the Friday session to potentially re-enter a new share position. But right now with the stock market up quite a lot, we'll see how this plays out. Might try to roll the calls and see if I can capture just a little bit more on this position for the Friday session. And then I'll probably try to roll up and out here on these 428s and then roll these puts up a little bit, just to recenter myself a little bit higher. Like I said, I'm still projecting a little bit of bearishness into the Thursday-Friday session, so I don't want to get too aggressive. And I'll definitely keep an eye on price to see if we can hold these gains, or if we start to fall into the early session, then I probably don't have to adjust anything at all. So we'll see how it plays out. And then looking at the TQQs, I rolled down to 54. Again, that's up a lot, up to 57. Max profit here was 55.50. I continued to collect a little bit of money on those calls as they came down, so I did get some money there. And you can see I was positive on the day in that account. If I have to, I can roll this out a week, but like I said, I'll probably be patient on the triple Qs, waiting to see if they can hold these gains, or if it's just going to be a little bit shorter lived and we'll see the broader market pull down NVIDIA. And then just to give a little bit of context here on my current profit and loss graph, you can see my break even to the upside is up around 431.80. So I do have a couple of dollars of potential to the upside before I start to lose money. But like I said, I can adjust this call out and adjust this other call out to move this up and just buy myself a little bit of time to the upside. We'll see how that plays out. I can also roll these puts up a little bit to collect a little bit more credit to brace myself to the upside. We'll see if we can hold in this range. If we do finish right where we are, that would still be around a $300 profit at expiration, which isn't terrible over 5 days. But it's not ideal, so I'll probably try to make some adjustments on these calls. Overall, not terrible, but showing a little bit of risk here to the upside. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of NVIDIA earnings. Can it hold up markets, or will the rest of the market move lower regardless, and this is just a short-term spike? Definitely could go either way, but I'm leaning towards bearish. Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.